information loaded episode, a lot of things to break down, a lot of things that move into more detail as we start releasing more and more episodes. And don't forget to emphasize the fact that we have something that has never been done in pickleball coming up on August 17th with Angelo and Ettore Rossetti. All right, and so we'll start with some confirmed news, which is really fun stuff. So we briefed a little bit on the upcoming world record that you and Et will be doing together. We validated some times, really what's going on. So just update us with the confirmation of everything in the event in total.
So we're going to set our 4th Guinness World Record title for the longest pickleball volley rally, being held Saturday, August 17th in Connecticut, indoors. We just need to confirm the time and the actual location. In the past, we've always attempted to start our records early in the morning because of the duration. You know, the 14.5-hour one we were supposed to start at 9 a.m., but when we arrived, there were news crews there and the fire marshal. So we had to confirm with the fire marshal and all the news crews. So once we did all the interviews, then we started at 9:30 and we finished at a minute past midnight. That was the tennis record of 14 hours and 31 minutes. This one we anticipate to take about 5 hours. So it'll probably start mid-morning to be convenient for the volunteers who are trying to raise money for Save the Children and also count our shots. So probably around 10 a.m., but that's not official or confirmed. But what is confirmed with Guinness World Records Limited is the date, Saturday, August 17th. It's like a puzzle because there are so many people now unofficially that want to be a part of it and want me to move the date and want my brother to move the date. So it's going to happen on that day, and the rest is going to be history. Since our last podcast out, we did have another practice, and again, it was disastrous. So the failure coach, I'm going to be putting the failure coach to use because we have failed more times practicing for this record than any other record combined. So for people who do not play pickleball, to rally the ball a little bit more than 14 feet consecutively without making it bounce or hit the net and without stepping forward is extremely challenging. It's more challenging than I thought it would be.
Emphasize why.
Yeah, you know, it's the paddle itself is so small. So there's 2 types of paddles, more the longer one and the wider one. And I first practiced with the longer one. Now I'm going to do the record with the wider one. It just has more surface area, not in total, but on the width of it. And I used a sweet spot trainer that I put over. You and I have used it in some of our coaching lessons. And that was really helpful, but at the same time scary, because when you hit a 2 or 1.5, it's not forgiving. So the ball, you know, doesn't reach the kitchen line on the other side and it's a miss. So the good news is we haven't missed in the net.
Okay.
The bad news is the miss. There's not going to be a miss, but in practice, the misses have been short in the kitchen. And you try to lean, to do your best to lean, and it ricochets off the edge, a 1, and flies all over. And again, we practiced outdoors. It was 98, 99 degrees. So we tried to make
this week, right?
Yeah. Actually last week. And so the humidity level was really high. It was basically, you're not supposed to be outdoors, but we made the conditions as difficult as possible. But when they're so difficult, you don't get that feeling of making it.
Mm.
You don't feel like you're making progress. So we want to make one of our next practices indoors to make it more similar to game day. But again, because the ball is a plastic ball, it doesn't have resiliency or compression to it, especially hitting a ball at that close range. The ball is not compressing. So whatever energy you give to it is what it has. It doesn't bounce like a tennis ball where it has a potential for energy. That's what makes it so difficult, Al. And the other is, and this really would help you and others listening, is
Mm.
you can't go through the motions of hitting the ball like, okay, let me just hit 1,000 balls or whatever. It has to be, you have to hit one ball at a time
Mm.
with good technique. And that is what is making this so challenging, is I have to hit 5,000, more than 5,000 balls, actually hit the ball, actually hit the sweet spot, relax my fingers as soon as I finish hitting, get back to ready. You got to do that all in less than a second and a half. So,
Where
you
does
know,
visualization come into play too? Because technique here is definitely critical, right? In order to improve how consistently we get a 3 on the paddle. Now, visualizing the shot every single time, how does that come into play here as well? Because that's a key component that we talk about too.
so I put my drive time whenever I'm in the car to good use. I did this for the record on Roger Federer's birthday, August 6th of 2015, which, by the way, Prime Video just launched a documentary, his final 12 days. Excellent. And
I'm
a
gonna
little
have
bit
to go
about the
watch it.
mental game, but yeah, it's really good. So when we were practicing for the longest tennis volley rally, Al, in the car while I'm driving. I mean, I don't recommend this while you're driving, but I'm driving with my left hand. And I'm a good driver. I drive with my left hand, and my right hand, I'm doing this while I'm in the car, and and I do that like in church, and so wherever. And but it when you're gonna do something like this, it consumes your life,
Mm.
and what I realize is I want to make a difference in someone else's life, not just my own. And I know the harsh reality of the world that we live in, Al, is that people don't remember second place.
Yeah.
They don't remember it. It's just the winners, the world record holders, the gold medalists, the champions. And knowing that, so you have to accept that that's the way it is. And if you want to make a difference in someone's life and tell them not to focus on outcome and wins, you have to win so they don't have to.
You know what? I haven't thought about it that way, but you're right. You're right to give them extraordinary perspective ultimately. Um, so with that being said, August 17th, not sure what time it's currently starting yet, but we will update y'all with that. But mark that date on your calendars because there will be a new world record set on that day. Now
Correct.
we have some fun stuff that is in the works. We cannot talk about it yet, but we will have plenty of fun stuff to announce leading up to that event as well.
Yeah.
So where this is great transitioning into here is because something, one, I have recently gone through, and two, you are also experiencing as you are working through this world record is two pieces. And we'll start with one. The first piece is when you are approaching a new ceiling where your performance is being elevated, you feel great on the court, you are winning matches. How do you really ground yourself to not get ahead and really set expectations as we've talked about? You have a rule in your book that needs to really be emphasized because this is where recently I went wrong, right? We talked about me getting to a point where my skill set has really improved, and we talk about even getting to a new peak, right? And really pushing barriers from there. But by
Yeah.
setting expectations, it really set me backwards. So brief us on when you are in those moments and you feel yourself being elevated, you could tell that you're breaking through new barriers. You could see it. People are even telling you it. How do you navigate that to really stay grounded and not get so far ahead that you may have a now significant decline and even truly have an overwhelming amount of frustration because you accidentally did set expectations?
Yeah. So that's a common mistake athletes make, especially athletes that become elite or
Mm,
improve. And that's because that's your blind spot. Your blind spot is the confusion between goals and expectations. And in my book Tenacity, chapter 27, I talk about my 0-100 rule. It's 100% effort, but zero expectations. Now, expectations aren't your standards. They're not, I'm going to show up on time or be prepared. But what expectations I mean is expectations on the result. So I'll demonstrate it for you, Al. Let's
yeah.
say you play a big PPA tournament this weekend.
Yep.
And on Monday, I call you up and I go, Al, how'd you do? What's your response?
I will tell you the stereotypical response is based off of winning and losing, right?
Yes.
It's like, I did well because I won my matches, or I didn't do well because I lost them.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that is the most dangerous question you can ask someone. It
Yeah.
it, it goes into a rabbit hole because it's the same thing as if you're a dad or a mom or a dad and you have a son or a daughter as an athlete and you say, if you win gold this weekend, we will take you out for ice cream. No, you're tying the incentive to winning. He or she has no control over winning. Stop. Please stop. You take the person out for ice cream no matter what. So going back to what you said about the
Yeah.
expectations creeping in, when you raise another platform or bar, or let's say you go up a step on the ladder to your dreams and goals, step toward your success, at the bottom rung, or the below the base of the ladder, where the ladder prongs touch the ground, that is your expectation level on the result, and it stays there forever, indefinitely, because raising your expectation can only hurt you. And if we can go into the sports psychology of it and the psychology of how your mind processes future thinking, is if you have an expectation that now you are better than before, therefore you should have a bigger win margin or win more or beat people that you haven't beaten.
Mm,
Your mind is future thinking while you're competing. It can't operate at 100% not being 100% present. So if, let's say, 10% you're future thinking and only 90% you're present, the problem is there's such fine margins between winning and losing that 10% is a chasm. So I have a question for you in the audience, Al. Roger
hit,
Federer, in
hit me
his
with it.
career, since he's topical right now with this Prime Video that came out,
Hmm.
what do you think of all of the points that he played? All of the points that he played,
Okay.
what percent in his career? Now, remember, he's arguably one of the greatest tennis players of all time.
Yeah.
He, uh, has so many Grand Slams, so many titles, played more Wimbledon matches than anyone in history. What winning percent do you think, or what percent of points did he win in his career? What percent?
Let's go with like 60 or 70.
54%. And 60 is close, 70 is a little
Yeah.
further away, but 54%. So I don't know about you, Al, but when I was in school, 54 was failing.
Yeah.
And here, 54% is almost the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time in a sport.
Wow.
So this is where it gets kind of cool.
Mm.
Bad line calls, mistakes, mini failures in pickleball or in any sport, but let's say pickleball, do not lose the match for you or the game for you. It's your reaction to your failures that differentiates the champions from non-champions. How do you recover? And that is why I don't say mental toughness. I say mental strength, because tough is brittle. It could break once it goes beyond your capacity. Once you're challenged more than you thought you could be. Whereas strength is resilience. It's like a rubber band. You take a large rubber band and you stretch it and you try to bend it, and you won't break the rubber band by bending it. So that is being like clay, having this dynamic resilience based on what's happening in the game. And that is so important. Even Novak Djokovic mentioned it. It's who recovers better from their mistakes, not who makes less mistakes. It's not.
Was it Federer who said, he talked about that recovery process briefly, and you probably know this, and if I botch it, you could rephrase. But I remember him talking about in between points somewhere.
Yeah.
And him saying he gives himself like 15 seconds, meaning 5 seconds to really, I'll say, dwell on the shot that he just missed. 10 seconds to maybe, I think he said, rehearse how it should have been. And then another 5 seconds to brief himself into the new point to make him present again. Is that relatively what he said?
Yeah. Prep. The third one would be prep for the next point, which is usually imagery.
Yes, but all in all, it's 15 seconds, right? He's doing that in 15 seconds. He's not doing that in point to point. He's doing that between points, 15 seconds, walking back to the baseline, resetting, and putting himself present into the next point.
Yeah, and I would say so. It's 5, 5, and 5. Anyone can have their own method, but you do need to have part of your routine is resetting your mind from the last point. And here's the key: whether you won it or not, because you can't have a thought and emotion at the same time, even a positive one. So if you're so fired up after the last point, you don't let it go and reset for the next point, you're not going to be fully present with your mind if the emotions from the last point carried over to this point. That's why you got to get back to neutral from the ups or downs. And that's really important.
It is. It's tremendously important. So to summarize for us briefly then, if we are peaking and reaching new ceilings, really what the tactic is to handle that. If we had to put it into one sentence, what do I need to do when I'm peaking to keep myself grounded? Is it simply zero expectation? 2 words?
I would say eliminate peak from your mental vocabulary. Let's
say we're breaking a new barrier. So I agree with that too. I agree with that too.
Flow state. We're reaching flow state.
Okay. Let's say we're reaching flow state.
Yeah.
How we don't get to a point where now we're setting expectations and ultimately frustration creeps in. And as we talked about, it doesn't do anything positive for us.
Yep.
Is zero expectations the simple 2 words that somebody needs to do to remind themselves, hey, although I am getting to a point where I'm seeing flow state more often than before, I still need to hold zero expectations?
I would say either zero expectations or remove expectations. So if expectations creep in, remove expectations, and then the gap, the space that replaces those expectations are your eagles, that your control.
So the reason that I say that is because I don't know about anybody else, but I'm a person who takes something like that, a couple words, puts it as my phone background, or writes a little note in my journal so that I can go back and quickly be reminded of, hey, here's the state that I need to be in this time when I'm feeling this way. So now on the other end of the spectrum, which is crazy, right? Within a week to 10 days, I myself went from, hey, I'm breaking new barriers, reaching flow state more consistently,
Yep.
to now feeling super down in the dumps beyond where I've been. So now on the other side of things, it is when we are in that moment, how are we navigating from a mental standpoint if your body's not keeping up with you? So for me, it was my physical nature. I felt slow. I felt lethargic. I didn't have a lot of energy. I had a few injuries that had flared up, which could be due to overtraining. But I really let that domino into my mental state. Rather than letting my mental state really tailor me back, I let it domino into there, which you really don't want to allow to happen. You want your mental state to kind of carry through those lows. So tell us when you are at that point, and this is why this is a good reference, is because you're just going through this in your world record, right? You're in a position where like you're failing more than you ever have, especially with already setting 3 world records, and now you're trying to navigate that. So when you're in that position, what do I need to do to navigate those lows, those valleys that none of us enjoy, but ultimately are where the most growth come from?
Oh, it's not pretty. So that's why a lot of people don't do it. You
Yeah.
know, it's very humbling. It leaves you questioning why. Why am I putting so much time, money, effort
Mm.
into this? Why am I sacrificing everything for what? And when the what is your static purpose, that purpose that is just a rock, I know when you know, unfortunately, when I visit my mom at the graveyard, her tombstone is always going to be there.
Mm.
And so, you know, those are the things that get me through. And then the challenges don't become challenges anymore. They just become part and parcel of the process of doing what it is you set your heart and mind to.
Mm. So I think that's always a narrative that we need to keep emphasizing, is the importance of getting you through those lows is that you're working for a bigger purpose, right?
Yeah.
So the second piece of that is, the unfortunate part is that stuff still creeps in, right? You
Yes.
still get in your own way regardless of your purpose. So sometimes the purpose is the reminder that you need, but other times it's, what do we need to do to just get us back out of there? If we did do the same thing, what I would say is, if at your flow state, you're a new ceiling, a new barrier that you're getting at, it is zero expectation. That's something that I write down personally.
Yes.
On the other end of the spectrum, I would say if there was one word that would get you out of there, it is purpose.
Yes.
However, we did talk about some tactical ways to actually attack and break down that mental state that you are in, especially where, let's say, for reference for me, it was a lingering injury that I was mad about myself for. So to give a little bit of a background, I traveled down to DC, so I'm in the car for 6 hours, went to the Major League Pickleball event. And then after being in the car for 6 hours, I immediately get up in the next morning and try to work out, putting strain on my body when it's already tight, already not mobile, adding more strain to my body. Then I'm going to the event and I'm standing for 6, 8 hours watching pickleball, up and down, up and down, up and down, and doing the same thing the next day over again. So in that state, I just allowed my body to accumulate strain. And basically what your body does is you have a weak link somewhere in your chain, right? There's one link that's weaker than the rest, and mine happens to be my hip. So I was frustrated with myself for not prioritizing that. I felt like Superman the week before, and then I immediately got humbled with the fact that, hey, your body still does not operate the best in your right hip. That's your weak spot. That's where overtraining is. But where I got in my own way was not only being aware of it, but accepting it. And I think that was a key that you gave me, was moving forward from awareness to acceptance and really how to go about that. So you want to break that down for us a little bit, because that impacted me heavily.
Yeah. So I call it awareness acceptance. So it's first being aware of what's going on. In this case, let's say it's your right hip.
Yeah.
So it's aware that something is going on. It's not good. It's not bad. You're not judging it or grading it. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you accept it. It's okay. I can't do anything about this right now. Right now. If it's between games, then yeah, stretch it out, that sort of thing. But if it's not, and right, it's okay. So I can't do anything about it right now. So therefore I move it aside. I don't think about it anymore. And for those people that are taskmasters that love to check things off their list, rather than erase it, put it at a future date that is after your event. So if your tournament is on a Saturday and a Sunday, say on Monday morning at 10 a.m., I'm going to deal with my hip.
Okay.
But for now, it is what it is. I have to accept where I am right now. I'm right where I need to be. And oh, by the way, if you create it as a challenge and you use your mind to perform even better despite the injury, you say, wouldn't it be a great story if I could still figure out a way to win with the injury?
Yeah.
I told you the story. I brought the wrong paddle to a tournament, and it's okay. It was okay. I still was able to win gold. It's okay. Everything is fine. It's not fine when you're in preparation phase, but when you're in game phase, that it has to be fine. Otherwise, if it's not fine, just shake the guy's hand, give him the game, and go home. Because if you're not going to be 100% present, especially against a very strong player, it's not happening, or a strong team. So you got to get out of the way of yourself. And so to get out of the way is the awareness acceptance, aware of what you can and can't control, focus on the things that you can control, accept the ones that you cannot, and then move into that next phase of, okay, now what is it going to do to my game? Okay, in pickleball, I have to hit, 2 or 3 resets, not just one. I have to hit.
Would you call this like a solution phase? So if you were going awareness, acceptance, would you say the last one is like solution? What's the solution now?
Yeah, solution, game plan, strategy, tactic. What are you going to do differently?
What are you going to do about
it? What's that?
I said, what are you going to to about it?
What are you going to do about it? So what? So there's an injury, something that's an excuse, right?
Yeah.
It's a guised excuse. Whenever a guy's excuse comes in your mind, you say, so what? Now what? So what? Then what? What am I going to do about it? Now what? And
I love that. If
you could do the so what is the acceptance piece, and it's the non-excuse piece, and then what is you're taking action, and this is what I'm going to do about it. What are you going to do about it? And then you keep repeating that, and then you get through it.
So realistically, like if I was to summarize this piece, it would be no excuses, right? It would be understanding that if you are saying, oh, my poor hip, or, oh, I don't have my paddle today, or I ran out of grips, or I don't have my eraser, so I'm not getting as much spin on my paddle. At that point, you're making a lot of excuses to say it's okay that this person is going to beat my ass, right?
Yeah.
Now, in reference though, you don't want to have any excuses. You want to say, okay, these are the elements today. There's a couple things that may have been in my control but are now not. And I need to find a way to figure it out. I need to find a way to still play well. And we could define that differently, but still play to the best of my ability for that day, regardless of the environmental factors, right? So if I were to summarize that too, I wrote down after our call the other day, I wrote down no excuses.
Yeah.
And to the point that you say the reason and what we didn't emphasize, but I love that came out of this, and I would tell anybody to write this down and actually use it because I'm going to go use it, is that future date planning. That's huge. For me to say on tournament day, I am playing, my hip is irritating me. I'm personally frustrated because I'm not at 100%, but 99% of the time you are not. For me to say, you know what, today I'm dealing with that, but Monday I'm going to go about ways of addressing it. But for now, I'm going to deal with it. That is huge. That's a huge mindset shift for me because then I don't have any excuses. And delaying that, honestly, a couple days in that retrospect is not that big of a deal, right? It's different if you're dealing with a serious injury, right? If you broke your ankle or a leg, that's a little bit of a different scenario.
Yeah.
However, like you talked about, if you're missing a paddle, if you have irritation in your hip, even if a lot of people these days have tennis elbow, right? A lot of people have tennis elbow. Same thing. Deal with it that day. Set your new date on Monday or whatever day needs to be, and that's when you're going to go deal with it. So ultimately, no excuses. I love that. I love that framework, and I think that was a big breakthrough for me at a moment when I felt very low, right? And the most frustrating part about that is that I was just coming off of a new high.
Yeah.
So I went from a new high to a new low, and that drastic difference is what was frustrating. But the only reason it was frustrating is because I set expectations at the new high. I didn't remind myself of the 0-100 rule. I did ultimately say, you know what? I broke through a new ceiling. I should be able to win more games. I should be able to put more points on the board. I should be able to have less misses. And the reason that was such a good reminder is because it is true, me applying that in real time, having truly zero expectation. Now, transitioning into the last piece of that, the reason that I said expectations is because I confused it with what are goals.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was also a huge breakthrough for me was that expectations are not goals. They are completely separate.
Yeah.
So do you want to define for us like how they are separate, really why they are separate, and how we need to go about goal setting so that we set these goals, we're dividing them because there's different types of goals as well. So let's start with one, the difference between goals and expectations. And then two, we'll get into the types of goals that you should define moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. So an expectation on an outcome. So I'd say there's two types of expectations. There's expectation
Okay.
of your standards, which is a controllable. I'm going to pack my bags. I'm going to arrive early and on time. I'm going to be hydrated. You know, I had my energy bars with me, whatever, protein shake. Those are your standards. So I don't mean zero standards. I mean, that's a controllable. That's preparation.
Yeah.
But the expectation of the outcome is something that is completely arbitrary, that reminds me of entitlement. You and I, we're not entitled to beat anybody, win anything.
Mm.
You know, we have to focus on our controllables, the effort, attitude, gratitude, learning, enjoyment, sportsmanship, and freely. You focus on those things, and whatever that gets you is whatever that gets you. The outcome, the winning, is a byproduct of the process. It is not the destination of the process. The destination is whatever it is, whatever that gets you. You have no idea in pickleball how much the other team has improved or trained, coached, whatever. You
Yeah.
don't know. You have no idea, and so that is a dynamic target that you shouldn't be chasing. You focus on yourself. You focus on your controllables. Now, goals, Michael Phelps, I had the honor of meeting him, and he said that when he was a young boy, he wrote in his journal in a notebook, and he put it under his bed. He put, "I want to swim in the Olympics," and then he took it back out from under his bed and crossed off that and said, "I want to win a gold medal in the Olympics." Put it back under the bed, forgot about it. And he is the most decorated Olympian in the history of Olympics. So
Yeah.
it's you can't keep focusing on your goals. You focus on your processes, your controllables, and the goals happen. They happen. They're a byproduct, but that's why you write them down so you don't forget about them.
Yeah.
And you revisit them later. You can't every week look at your long-term goal and say, "I didn't win a gold medal yet. I didn't, no. And so the goal is something that you don't focus on. You write it down.
So when it comes to those goals, and something that we are going to redefine with me coming up, and I think that there will be value in sharing how I've gone about them. But you have your long-term goals, right? Like you said, is something that you're writing down, is a subconscious really effort, and then you're forgetting about it. Now, though, you do have short-term and medium-term goals or even micro goals. How do we break that down to in relatively time frames? And also, what do those look like? If we're sticking to pickleball, and let's say for myself, like the long-term goal is to be a top 10 player in the world, sticking to pickleball.
Yep.
Now, let's say if we were to set medium and short-term goals for individual, for myself, how should I go about them? What should those give us some examples of what those may look like?
Well, first, the short-term goal would be, it's different with everyone, but would
Yeah.
be, because it depends on the lifespan of the athlete and the
Yep.
sport itself. But you're looking at 6 months to a year for short-term, mid-range goals, 2 to 5 years, and then long-term goals beyond that. And then career goals when I'm all said and done. What does it look like?
Mm.
And then you break down the goals into 3 types. There's outcome goals, performance goals, and process goals. So outcome, performance, and process. And the outcome is the wins and losses. I want to win 80% of my matches this upcoming year. That would be outcome. I want to win 20 gold medals, whatever, that's an outcome. A performance goal would be, I want to improve my return height by 10%. I want to improve my serve speed by 10 miles an hour. And those can be broken down into short, mid-range, and long-term. And then the process goals, I want to hit all of my, third shot drops landing in the kitchen. They need to land in the kitchen, or at least 80% of them, whatever it would be, And so those are, you can, there's so many.
Yeah.
But
There's endless. There's endless.
endless. But what you got to do is you got to take the endless to the useful. You got to make the endless to useful. So what's useful? Well, it goes back to the individual athlete. It's, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Do you want to, work on weakness improvement or weapon development? Now, Roger Federer, if you talk to Roger Federer, he doesn't believe in weakness improvement. He believes in weapon development.
Yeah.
So you could develop your weapons so big that it covers up your weakness, or you can do weakness improvement. I like to do a little bit of both, but hey, and then you take that. And so for each athlete, it's going to be different. So it could be, putting top spin on your backhand or using two hands on your backhand on the dink rather than always a one hand slice, something like that, whatever it would be. So
to use an example for me that's unique to myself, and I think this is a good example for people to reference when in regard to uniqueness. We've saw that if I am on balance, it really doesn't matter where I am on the court, right?
Yeah.
I can take a relatively high percentage shot as long as I am on balance. So what we talked about as a goal was when we're moving forward into, if I'm practicing or playing in a game, tracking how many times throughout that match, throughout that game, that I am actually on balance taking those shots and using the 3-2-1 method in order to do so.
Yep.
Right. But that is unique personally to me, only because we found that I have a low amount of misses or mishits, meaning when we're talking about point of contact, pushing towards the one area, the 1.5.
Yep.
When I'm off balance. If I'm on balance, my resets are pretty damn good, and pretty much majority of shots I can take as long as my balance is a 3. So that's something that I am targeting personally with my goals moving forward, as a good reference. So what I will say is, to summarize really, and then we'll kind of get to our usual question.
Yeah.
To really summarize what we went over, we went through how you need to go about being at a new ceiling, being in flow state consistently. And it's using the 0 to 100 rule in your book of setting and keeping zero expectations and consistently using 100% effort, right? That is a controllable. The first one in Eagles, 100% effort is really a non-negotiable, regardless of how you feel that day.
Yeah.
That leads directly into when you are at your lowest, or even just at a low point, and you're not feeling great, because rarely are you feeling 100%. And you've given that reference before, right? I forgot who you said it was, but she talked about, who was it that
Gigi
said?
Fernandez.
Gigi Fernandez talked about maybe all of 2 matches in her entire career she felt like she was 100%.
Yeah.
Maybe, right? So with that being said, majority of athletes never compete at 100%. They're trying to almost say, hey, my 80%, my 75% is better than your 100%. That's really what you're working towards. But at that point, when you do feel low, the summary is no excuses, right? It's saying, okay, I'm dealing with this. For my reference, it's a hip inflammation. It's a hip jam. At that point, I'm saying, I'm dealing with this. That is okay. I will handle and recover from this on Monday. But today, I need to find a way to work through it. I need to find a way to still perform regardless of what I'm dealing with. So the summary of that at your low point is really no excuses. And then the difference between goals and expectations.
Let me just jump in and do a little quick clarification.
Yeah, give me it.
100% on your Eagles is a 3.
Yes.
So that is attainable, and definitely more than twice in a career.
100.
It's more, she found flow state, like you're in the flow, can do no wrong.
Yes.
Twice in a year, let's say. So it's that you're going to be 100% on effort.
Yes.
You're going to be 100% on attitude. You're going to positive attitude. You're going to be 100% on learning on the job training while you're playing, aware of what's working with 100% gratitude. 100% enjoyment, 100% sportsmanship, 100% swinging freely, right? And that does not equal flow state, even if you
No.
are. But it gets you closer than you ever would be if you do find it. But I can assure you, if you focus on non-controllables, you will not find flow state.
I learned that the hard way, as we've known. That's why when I talk about Eagles, how truly life-changing it was applying that, right?
Yeah.
And then the last piece being the difference between goals and expectations, and
Yep.
really understanding that, and even how to niche down into the different types of goals, which you talked about, one being outcome, two being process goals, and then three being performance goals.
Yes.
Now getting into usually what is our secret question to close with. We are currently talking about lows, and everybody goes through them. What was, and we'll stick to your career through tennis and even coaching as pickleball. What was your lowest point, and how did you navigate it?
I think in regards to tennis, it was losing my mentor Scott, because that was that feeling of you're doing the same thing that you did yesterday, today, but
Yeah.
you're not finding your fulfillment. And so that was a low point for
Mm.
sure. And it's just coming to terms with that voice is not there anymore to reassure you and support you. And so, and then that's when I found the purpose of that the next year. It took me about a year, but then my brother and I figured out that, hey, if we do something that's never been done before to honor his legacy, then we did all right. And so, it goes back to the redefining and refining your purpose, because the purpose, although mostly static in your life, is dynamic. And that was a point where I had to really do things for a purpose, because purposeful pursuit of goals is not fulfilling.
So if someone is struggling, because we do talk about the importance of purpose a lot, and it really is the driving factor, right? Someone who's struggling to really find or identify their purpose, what should they be looking towards? What should they be trying to even consider to say, you know what, this is what's going to get me out of bed every single morning, and this is what's going to get me to pursue this regardless of the highs or lows?
I know it's gruesome, but pretend that, you have one day to live, and
Mm,
look back on your life and say, do I have any regrets? And if I do, I better fix them. And what are they? And
yeah.
then what am I proud of myself for? And what do I want to be remembered by? And if you look, so that would be future thinking. You don't do that during a game, but you think about in the future, 20 years from now, what do I want to be known for? What do I want to be doing? What brings me joy and peace?
So to build on that a little bit, and you're right. And I do this with my gratitude practice at night. And I pulled this actually from Alex Hermosi, who's a major one of the most popular entrepreneurs right now on social media, and he just has so much good stuff. Anyways, a practice that he does is he references his 85-year-old self. So
Yeah.
he basically has a dialogue with himself as if he's speaking to his 85-year-old self, and what that individual would say and what that individual would guide him to do. Because at the end of the day, right, if you're thinking about yourself that close to death, in full transparency, what would you be looking back and saying that you wanted to do or should have done or brought you joy or that you felt like was worth allocating your time to? Because nothing else matters there. You're not dying with your money, right? You're not dying really with anything else. But what you can reflect on is that you felt that the time you allocated to the things in your life was a life worth living. And so I would challenge anybody to have that dialogue, which is spot on with Angelo, with your 85-year-old self, to then possibly bring you what your purpose in life is and
Yeah,
what really drives you to get out of bed every single morning. So,
absolutely.
Ange, thank you for your time today. Another fantastic episode. So much information in here. And we will definitely dive more into a lot of the pieces of this because, once again, information loaded episode, a lot of things to break down, a lot of things that move into more detail as we start releasing more and more episodes. And don't forget to emphasize the fact that we have something that has never been done in pickleball coming up on August 17th with Angelo and Ettore Rossetti breaking another Guinness World Record. Ange, thank you again for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.